The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and planets that stretched beyond what the human eye could see. For centuries, Earth had been nothing more than a small blue dot in this endless expanse. Humanity dreamed of reaching out to the stars, but they were not alone. Other civilizations had already claimed the galaxy as their own. Among them, the Zarn hegemony stood supreme, a coalition of alien species that ruled over most of known space. Their empire was ancient, their technology advanced, and their arrogance unmatched. Humanity's journey into deep space began quietly. The United Terran Coalition, an alliance of nations from Earth, sent its first interstellar vessel, the Atlas, to explore beyond the solar system. It wasn't long before the ship encountered signs of life, signals, strange energy patterns, and eventually entire fleets of alien ships. Captain Daniel Reyes, a calm and thoughtful man with years of experience commanding naval vessels, led the mission. His crew included engineers, scientists, and diplomats, all eager to make contact with extraterrestrial beings. When the Atlas arrived at Vexus Prime, the capital world of the Zarn hegemony, humanity hoped for peace. They wanted to join the galactic community to share knowledge and resources. A delegation stepped onto the council floor, ready to present Earth's case. Dr. Lena Carter, a brilliant astrophysicist who helped design the warp engines used by the Atlas, carried data files containing humanity's greatest achievements. She spoke confidently about Earth's rapid progress in science and technology, but her words fell on deaf ears. The Zarn Council members loomed above the humans, their insectoid bodies towering and intimidating. High Speaker Kavor, the leader of the council, listened without emotion. When it was his turn to speak, he did so with a voice like grinding metal. "Your kind is primitive," he said bluntly. "You are fragile, insignificant, and unworthy of our time." The chamber erupted in laughter. Alien delegates chuckled and sneered while the humans stood frozen, humiliated. Captain Reyes clenched his fists, but kept his composure. He knew anger would only make things worse. Despite the mockery, the Zarn allowed humanity a small concession. They granted Earth a minor system on the edge of their territory, a barren place called Proxima Non. It had little value, barely enough resources to sustain life, but it was something. The Zarn saw no harm in giving away such worthless land. To them, humanity was too weak to pose any real threat. As the delegation left Vexus Prime, the laughter followed them even as they boarded the Atlas. News of the event spread quickly across the galaxy, and soon everyone knew about the joke played on humanity. Back on Earth, the reaction was mixed. Some people felt ashamed, believing the Zarn were right to dismiss them. Others grew angry, determined to prove the aliens wrong. Public protests erupted outside government buildings, demanding action against the insult. Politicians argued among themselves about how to respond. Should they retaliate? Or should they accept the humiliation and focus on rebuilding their strength? In the quiet halls of the Terran Defense Directorate, decisions were being made. Admiral Robert Hayes, a stern man with piercing eyes, called together his top advisors. "They laughed at us," he said firmly, "but they underestimated us. We may be young, but we are adaptable. We will show them exactly what humanity is capable of." Plans were drawn up for Project Icarus, a secret initiative aimed at building a new generation of warships. These vessels would combine cutting-edge human ingenuity with salvaged alien technology to create something revolutionary. While work began in secret, Commander Paul Briggs took charge of training a new fleet of pilots and captains. A battle-hardened veteran with scars both physical and emotional, Briggs believed in discipline above all else. He pushed his recruits to their limits, teaching them strategies never seen before in warfare. "Out there, we won't have numbers. On our side," he told them during one particularly grueling exercise. "We'll have to rely on speed, precision, and brains. That's how we win. Months passed, and tensions simmered. Then came the day when a Zarn patrol fleet entered Proxima 9 under the pretense of inspection. What they found waiting for them was unexpected. 3 sleek ships emerged from behind asteroids, moving faster than anything the Zarn had ever encountered. The Dauntless-class dreadnoughts, prototypes of Project Icarus, unleashed devastating firepower. Rail cannons tore through Zarn armor like paper, and within minutes, 2 cruisers were destroyed. The third fled, sending back a frantic transmission. "They are not what we believed." Word of the skirmish traveled fast. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Could humanity really be a threat? Most dismissed the idea, assuming it was a fluke. But deep down, doubt crept into the minds of those who had laughed at Earth's expense. And somewhere on a distant planet, Captain Daniel Reyes watched the footage of the battle with satisfaction. Humanity's message was clear. Respect must be earned, and if necessary, it would be taken by force. As the stars twinkled silently in the night sky, humanity prepared for what lay ahead. They had faced ridicule, scorn, and dismissal. Now, they were ready to fight back. In the cold darkness of the Oort cloud, far beyond the orbit of Neptune, humanity worked in secret. The Zarn hegemony thought they had humiliated Earth, leaving it with scraps and broken pride. But while the galaxy laughed, humans labored tirelessly, determined to turn their shame into strength. Project Icarus became the heart of this effort, a massive undertaking hidden among the icy rocks and frozen comets at the edge of the solar system. Here, under layers of secrecy, Dr. Lena Carter led a team of engineers, physicists, and designers who were building something extraordinary. Lena was not like most scientists. She had spent years studying alien technology salvaged from old wrecks, found drifting near Earth's borders. Her mind worked differently, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. With her leadership, the team developed the Dauntless-class dreadnought, a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was smaller than the massive capital ships of the Zarn, but faster, more agile, and equipped with weapons that could pierce even the toughest armor. Rail cannons capable of firing projectiles at near-light speeds formed the backbone of its arsenal. Quantum shielding made the ship nearly impossible to hit. Every detail was designed for one purpose: to strike hard and fast, then disappear before the enemy could react. While Lena focused on the ships, Commander Paul Briggs trained the crews who would pilot them. He knew technology alone wouldn't win battles. Skilled people were needed to use it effectively. Briggs was a man shaped by war, his face lined with experience and his voice carrying the weight of authority. Under his command, hundreds of recruits learned how to think quickly, adapt to changing situations, and trust each other completely. They practiced maneuvers so complex they seemed impossible at first, but over time, the pilots mastered them. "Out there," Briggs often reminded them, "we won't get second chances. We have to be better than the Zarn, smarter than the Zarn, and faster than the Zarn." As the first Dauntless ships rolled off the assembly lines, news reached Earth about growing unrest in the outer colonies. Proxima 9, the barren world given to humanity as a mockery, was now home to mining operations and research stations. Though life there was harsh, settlers worked hard to make the planet livable. Then came reports of Zarn raiders harassing supply convoys and destroying equipment. Captain Daniel Reyes, still haunted by the laughter he endured on Vexus Prime, decided it was time to act. He assembled a small fleet consisting of 3 Dauntless dreadnoughts, the Vanguard, the Sentinel, and the Defender, and set course for Proxima 9. When the Zarn patrol fleet arrived, they expected an easy victory. Their ships were larger, slower, and heavily armored, built for crushing weaker opponents. What they didn't expect was the speed and precision of the Dauntless. Reyes ordered his ships to split up, using asteroids and debris fields as cover. The Zarn opened fire, their plasma, cannons lighting up the void, but their shots missed wildly. The human ships darted through the battlefield like ghosts, striking at weak points and retreating before retaliation could land. Lieutenant Jake Morrow, a young pilot from Chicago, flew one of the interceptors launched from the Vanguard. His job was to harass the Zarn fighters, keeping them busy while the bigger ships did their work. Jake's hands moved instinctively over the controls, weaving between enemy fire and launching missiles with pinpoint accuracy. For the first time in his life, he felt alive, part of something greater than himself. Around him, the battle raged. Explosions lit up the blackness of space as rail cannon rounds tore through Zarn hulls. The turning point came when the Vanguard fired a concentrated barrage at the lead cruiser. The impact shattered its engines, leaving the ship dead in space. Without hesitation, Reyes transmitted a message directly to the Zarn commander. "You came here thinking we were weak," he said, his voice steady and calm. "But you underestimated us. Leave now, or face destruction." The Zarn hesitated, unsure how to respond to such defiance. Before they could regroup, the dauntless ship struck again, disabling another cruiser and forcing the third to retreat. News of the victory spread quickly. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted. People poured into the streets cheering for the fleet that had avenged their humiliation. Images of burning Zarn ships filled screens across the globe, and for the first time, humanity felt hope. The galaxy noticed too. On distant worlds, oppressed species whispered stories of the humans who dared to fight back. Some began to wonder if Earth might truly become a force to reckon with. But the battle also sent shockwaves through the Zarn hegemony. High Speaker Kavor called an emergency session of the Council, demanding answers. How could a species they had mocked defeat their finest warriors? Advisors argued over strategy, some calling for immediate retaliation, others urging caution. Meanwhile, Captain Reyes returned to Earth, hailed as a hero. Yet he remained focused, knowing the fight was far from over. "We've proven we can win," he told his crew during a debriefing. "Now we need to prove we can keep winning." Behind closed doors, Admiral Robert Hayes approved plans to expand production of the Dauntless. New shipyards sprang up across the solar system, churning out vessels at an astonishing rate. Training programs intensified, producing more pilots and captains ready to take the fight to the Zarn. At the same time, Lena Carter turned her attention to improving the design of the dreadnoughts. She added cloaking devices, upgraded the AI systems, and tested experimental weapons that pushed the limits of physics. The Terran Defense Directorate also began reaching out to other species suffering under Zarn rule. Diplomats traveled secretly to rebel-held territories, offering support and resources in exchange for alliances. Slowly, a network of resistance formed, united by a shared hatred of the hegemony. Humanity may have been new to the galactic stage, but they understood the power of unity better than anyone else. As months passed, the galaxy watched and waited. The Zarn prepared for another assault, convinced that the loss at Proxima 9 was merely a fluke. Humanity, however, was no longer the laughingstock it once was. In the shadows of the Oort cloud, the forge burned brighter than ever, forging not just ships, but a future where Earth stood tall among the stars. And somewhere deep within the ranks of both sides, everyone knew the next clash would decide much. More than territory, it would decide the fate of empires. The Zarn hegemony did not take defeat lightly. For 10,000 years they had ruled the galaxy with an iron grip, crushing any who dared to oppose them. The skirmish at Proxima 9 was a stain on their honor, a crack in the armor of their invincibility. High Speaker Kavor demanded retribution, and so a massive fleet was assembled, tasked with obliterating humanity's presence in the outer colonies. Their target was clear: Proxima 9. the barren rock that symbolized Earth's weakness in the eyes of the Zarn. What they didn't know was that humanity was ready. Captain Daniel Reyes stood on the bridge of the ISS Titan, his new flagship, watching as data streamed across holographic displays. The Terran fleet had grown since the last battle, now numbering 12 Dauntless-class dreadnoughts supported by smaller escorts and swarms of autonomous drones. Reyes knew this would be the true test of humanity's strength. The Zarn were coming, not just to punish but to erase, and he intended to show them that humanity could not be erased so easily. Commander Paul Briggs paced the corridors of the Titan, checking on crews and ensuring every soldier was prepared. He had drilled these men and women for months, teaching them to think like predators rather than prey. "This isn't about being bigger or stronger," he reminded them during one final briefing. "It's about being smarter. Hit them where it hurts, then vanish before they can counterattack." His words carried weight, because everyone knew he had lived through battles far worse than this. If anyone understood survival, it was Briggs. As the Zarn fleet entered the Helios Belt, a dense region of asteroids and debris near Proxima 9, they expected resistance but not much of a challenge. Their ships formed tight formations, relying on overwhelming firepower to crush any opposition. What they didn't anticipate was the ambush waiting for them. Hidden among the rocks, the Terran fleet waited silently, engines powered down and shields inactive to avoid detection. When the Zarn passed through the belt, Reyes gave the order to strike. The first wave came from the drones, thousands of tiny machines programmed to swarm and disable enemy sensors. Chaos erupted as the Zarn ships struggled to track the relentless assault. Then the dauntless vessels moved in, darting between asteroids with unmatched speed. Rail cannons fired in quick bursts, targeting critical systems like engines and weapons arrays. Lieutenant Jake Morrow led a squadron of interceptors, weaving through the chaos and picking off Zarn fighters with surgical precision. His hands danced over the controls as he dodged plasma bolts and returned fire, each shot finding its mark. The Zarn commander tried to regroup, ordering his ships to break formation and pursue the elusive humans. But this played right into Reyes's plan. By splitting up, the Zarn exposed themselves to hit-and-run attacks from multiple angles. The Titan unleashed a barrage of missiles that crippled 2 cruisers, while the Vanguard slipped behind the enemy lines to attack their supply carriers. Without reinforcements or resources, the Zarn fleet began to falter. High above the fray, Dr. Lena Carter monitored the battle from a secure command center back on Earth. Her team had equipped the Dauntless ships with experimental AI systems designed to predict enemy movements and adapt in real time. As the battle unfolded, she saw her work paying off. The AI calculated trajectories faster than any organic mind could, allowing the Terran ships to stay one step ahead of their opponents. When the Zarn attempted to surround the Sentinel, the AI rerouted its course through a narrow gap between 2 asteroids, leaving the enemy confused and frustrated. By the time the dust settled, 8 Zarn ships were destroyed, and the rest were retreating in disarray. Captain Reyes ordered his fleet to hold position, knowing pursuit would risk stretching their forces too thin. Instead, he broadcast a message directly to the fleeing Zarn commander. "You came here to destroy us," he said, his tone calm but firm. "But you underestimated us. Tell your leaders this. If they want war, we will give them war." The war. Victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the battle reached even the most remote corners of the Zarn hegemony, sparking fear and doubt among their allies. Species long oppressed by the Zarn began to whisper of rebellion. On Gliss 7, miners sabotaged equipment and refused to meet quotas. On Zir 4, bio-slaves rose up against their overseers, inspired by tales of human resistance. Even within the hegemony itself, cracks began to form. Some council members questioned whether humanity posed a greater threat than they had assumed. Back on Earth, celebrations turned into calls for action. People demanded that the government push further, expanding, humanity's reach in freeing those still under Zarn control. Admiral Robert Hayes listened carefully, weighing the risks and rewards of such bold moves. He authorized Commander Briggs to begin training additional recruits, preparing for larger-scale operations. Shipyards worked around the clock to produce more dauntless vessels, while engineers refined existing designs based on lessons learned from the battle. Dr. Lena Carter shifted her focus to diplomacy, traveling aboard the Atlas to meet with rebel leaders. She brought offers of aid, weapons, technology, and strategic support in exchange for cooperation against the Zarn. Many were hesitant at first, unsure if humanity could truly stand against the might of the hegemony. But Lena's quiet confidence won them over. "We're not asking you to trust us blindly," she told a group of Neron scholars during one meeting. "Much like you, we've been underestimated. Together, we can change the balance of power." Meanwhile, Captain Reyes planned the next phase of the campaign. With the Zarn weakened and divided, he saw an opportunity to strike deep into their territory. Intelligence reports indicated vulnerabilities along their supply lines, routes that funneled resources from conquered worlds to the core systems. By disrupting these networks, humanity could cripple the hegemony's ability to wage war. It was a risky strategy requiring precise timing and coordination, but Reyes believed it was worth the gamble. As preparations continued, humanity's resolve hardened. They had started as a species dismissed and ridiculed, yet now they stood on the brink of something greater. Each victory proved that Earth was no longer a joke, but a rising power determined to carve its place among the stars. And though challenges lay ahead, one truth became undeniable. The Zarn had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. The galaxy was changing. Humanity's victories had sent ripples through the stars, shaking the foundations of the Zarn hegemony. Word of their defeat spread quickly, carried by spies, traitors, and rebels, eager to see the mighty empire fall. On distant worlds, oppressed species whispered stories of Earth's defiance, finding courage in the idea that even the smallest flame could ignite a firestorm. Captain Daniel Reyes knew this was the moment to strike harder, to push deeper into Zarn territory and dismantle their grip on the galaxy piece by piece. Commander Paul Briggs led the charge, his fleet slicing through Zarn supply lines with surgical precision. Using hit-and-run tactics, they targeted cargo ships, fuel depots, and communication hubs, leaving the hegemony scrambling to keep its vast empire connected. The Zarn were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers, but humanity's strategy was different. They didn't try to match the Zarn ship for ship or weapon for weapon. Instead, they exploited weaknesses, rigid formations, slow moving, convoys, and overconfidence bred from centuries of dominance. Each attack left the Zarn more disorganized, their forces stretched thin across the galaxy. Dr. Lena Carter, now serving as both scientist and diplomat, traveled aboard the Atlas to rally allies. Her quiet determination won over many who had once doubted humanity's resolve. She met with miners on Gliss 7, bio-slaves on 04, and exiled scholars from Nera, offering them freedom in exchange for cooperation. "We don't ask you to fight for us," she told them during one meeting. "We ask you to fight for yourselves. Together we can bring down an empire." Slowly, a coalition began to form. Species united not by shared history, but by shared oppression. They called themselves the Free Systems Alliance, a name that carried hope for all who dreamed of liberation. As the Terran fleet expanded its reach, so did its reputation. The Zarn grew desperate, throwing larger fleets into battle, in an attempt to crush humanity once and for all, but each engagement only highlighted their inability to adapt. At the Battle of Thalos Rift, a Zarn armada surrounded a small Terran task force led by Lieutenant Jake Morrow. Outnumbered 10-1, Morrow ordered his ships to split up, using asteroid fields and magnetic storms to confuse the enemy. His squadron darted between the massive Zarn cruisers, firing rail cannons and launching drones before disappearing into the chaos. By the time the Zarn realized what was happening, half their fleet was disabled, and the rest were retreating in disarray. The Turning point came at the Battle of Eridanus Gate, a heavily fortified choke point that controlled access to dozens of star systems. The Zarn sent 30 warships to defend it, convinced no force could break through their defenses. What they didn't expect was humanity's creativity. Captain Reyes devised a plan so bold it bordered on reckless. He sent a single dauntless class, Dreadnought, the Vanguard, accompanied by thousands of AI-guided drones, to take on the entire fleet. The operation relied on timing, stealth, and deception, all hallmarks of human ingenuity. The Vanguard, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Sarah, Blake approached the gate under cover of a solar flare. Its cloaking device masked its presence until it was too late for the Zarn to react. As the flare subsided, the drones surged forward, swarming the enemy ships and disabling their sensors. The Vanguard slipped past the outer defenses and deployed. A quantum pulse bomb, a weapon developed by Dr. Carter's team that generated an electromagnetic wave capable of shutting down advanced technology. When the bomb detonated, every Zarn ship within range lost power. Their shields collapsed, their weapons went dark, and their engines sputtered to a halt. Lieutenant Jake Morrow led a second wave of interceptors, picking off stragglers and ensuring none of the Zarn ships regained functionality. Within hours, the entire fleet surrendered, their crews stunned and demoralized. High Speaker Kavor watched the events unfold from Vexus Prime, his chitinous face unreadable, but his mandibles twitching in frustration. For the first time in millennia, the Zarn hegemony faced the possibility of defeat. Civil unrest flared on several allied worlds as populations turned against their rulers. The whispers of rebellion grew louder, fueled by humanity's relentless advance. Back on Earth, the mood shifted from cautious optimism to outright confidence. Shipyards churned out new vessels faster than ever, while training programs produced. Pilots and captains ready to join the fight. Admiral Robert Hayes approved plans to expand humanity's territory, securing key systems along the Zarn border. Colonies on Mars, Titan, and Centauri became hubs of innovation and defense, fortified against potential counterattacks. The United Terran Coalition transformed from a fledgling alliance into a galactic power, respected or feared by all who encountered it. Captain Reyes, now Fleet Admiral after his success at Eridanus Gate, prepared for the final campaign. Intelligence. Reports indicated growing instability within the Zarn core systems. Supply shortages and internal dissent weakened their ability to wage war, while the Free Systems Alliance continued to disrupt operations behind enemy lines. Reyes saw an opportunity to strike at the heart of the hegemony itself. "If we take Vexus Prime," he told his advisors during a strategy session, "we destroy their center of power. Without it, the Zarn will collapse." Preparations for the assault on Vexus Prime were meticulous. Every detail was planned, every contingency accounted for. The Terran fleet, now numbering over 200 ships, joined forces with rebel squadrons from across the galaxy. Together, they formed the largest armada ever assembled, a testament to humanity's ability to unite disparate groups under a common cause. Dr. Carter coordinated logistics, ensuring supplies and reinforcements reached the front lines without delay. Commander Briggs drilled his pilots relentlessly, emphasizing discipline and teamwork. "This isn't just about winning," he reminded them. "It's about proving we're better than they ever thought possible." As the fleet approached Vexus Prime, silence fell across the bridge of the ISS Titan. Reyes stood at the helm, watching as the planet grew larger on the viewport. It was a world of towering spires and glowing cities, a monument to the Zarn's ancient dominance. But beneath its gleaming surface lay fear and uncertainty. The hegemony's leaders knew their time was running out. High Speaker Kavor summoned his remaining forces, ordering them to defend the capital at all costs. Yet even he couldn't hide the doubt creeping into his voice. The battle began with a barrage of rail cannon fire, targeting orbital platforms and planetary shields. The Zarn fought fiercely, hurling everything they had at the invaders. but humanity's ships moved with unmatched agility, dodging plasma bolts and returning fire with devastating accuracy. Lieutenant Morrow led a daring raid on the flagship Kavath the Unyielding, disabling its reactor with a well-placed missile strike. As the massive vessel drifted powerless, the tide of the battle turned decisively in humanity's favor. By the time the dust settled, Vexus Prime lay in ruins. The Zarn Council surrendered unconditionally, their empire crumbling around them. High Speaker Kavor was captured and brought before Admiral Reyes, who looked at him with cold determination. "You laughed at us once," Reyes said quietly. "Now look where your arrogance has led you." Kavor said nothing, his once proud demeanor replaced by resignation. Across the galaxy, celebrations erupted. Oppressed species cheered as news of the Zarn's defeat spread. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, had risen to become a beacon of hope and resilience. The Free Systems Alliance declared the formation of the Stellar Concord, a new coalition, led jointly by humans and former vassals of the hegemony. Earth, once ridiculed, now stood as a symbol of unity and strength, and somewhere in the depths of space, among the stars that burned eternal and silent, the lesson was clear. Humanity had proven itself not through brute force, but through innovation, adaptability, and sheer willpower. Never again would they be underestimated. The final campaign began with silence. Humanity's fleet, now a massive armada joined by allies from across the galaxy, moved through the void without fanfare or declaration. There were no grand speeches, no broadcasts to announce their arrival. Captain Daniel Reyes, now Fleet Admiral, had ordered absolute secrecy. The goal was clear: to strike at the heart of the Zarn hegemony and dismantle it completely. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was focused on one objective: Vexus Prime. The journey to the Zarn core systems was tense. Pilots checked their instruments repeatedly, engineers ran diagnostics on engines and weapons, and commanders reviewed strategies until they could recite them in their sleep. Lieutenant Jake Morrow sat in his interceptor, staring at the controls as he thought about everything that had led them here. From the humiliation on Vexus Prime years ago to the battles fought in the Helios Belt and Eridanus Gate, humanity had come so far. Now they stood on the brink of something greater, a chance to reshape the galaxy. As the fleet approached Vexus Prime, the planet loomed large in the viewports of the ISS Titan. Its gleaming spires and sprawling cities were symbols of the Zarn's ancient dominance. But beneath the surface, cracks had formed. Civil unrest spread like wildfire as oppressed species rose up against their rulers. Supply shortages crippled military operations, and dissent among the council members weakened the hegemony's leadership. High Speaker Kavor, once an unshakable figure, now spent his days locked in emergency sessions, trying desperately to hold together what remained of his crumbling empire. The assault began at dawn. Rail cannons fired in unison, targeting orbital, platforms, and planetary shields. The Zarn defenders scrambled to respond, launching waves of fighters and firing plasma cannons in chaotic salvos. But humanity's ships danced through the chaos, their movements precise and calculated. Commander Paul Briggs coordinated the attack from the bridge of the Titan, issuing orders with calm authority. "Stay sharp," he reminded his crew. "They'll try to overwhelm us, but we've trained for this. Trust your instincts." Lieutenant Morrow led a squadron of interceptors into the fray, weaving between enemy fire and disabling Zarn fighters with surgical precision. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, guided by months of training and countless hours spent honing his skills. Around him, explosions lit up the void as rail cannon rounds tore through Zarn hulls. The battle raged fiercely, but humanity's forces held their ground, pushing deeper into enemy territory with every passing moment. Dr. Lena Carter monitored the operation from a secure command center aboard the Atlas. Her team had equipped the fleet with experimental technology, including AI systems capable of predicting enemy movements and adapting in real time. As data streamed across her screens, she saw how effective these innovations were. The Zarn struggled to keep up, their rigid tactics rendered obsolete by humanity's creativity and adaptability. When the flagship Kavath the Unyielding attempted to rally its forces, a well-placed missile strike from Morrow's squadron disabled its reactor, leaving the massive vessel adrift and powerless. High Speaker Kavor watched helplessly as his empire crumbled around him. He ordered reinforcements to Vexus Prime, but many never arrived. Supply lines had been severed by earlier strikes led by Commander Briggs, leaving distant fleets stranded and unable to intervene. Desperation set in as the Zarn defenders fought with increasing desperation, hurling everything they had at the invaders. Yet even their most powerful weapons proved ineffective against humanity's relentless advance. By midday, the tide of the battle had turned decisively in humanity's favor. Planetary shields collapsed under sustained bombardment, and orbital platforms fell silent one by one. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake led a daring raid on a key defense station, using cloaking devices to slip past enemy patrols and deploy quantum pulse bombs that disrupted Zarn communications. Without coordination, the remaining defenders faltered, their formations breaking apart as panic spread. Admiral Reyes gave the order to press the advantage. The Terran fleet surged forward, supported by rebel squadrons eager to deliver the final blow. Fighter wings launched strafing runs on ground installations, while dreadnoughts unleashed devastating barrages on military strongholds. The streets of Vexus Prime erupted in chaos as civilians fled collapsing buildings and fleeing soldiers abandoned their posts. By evening, resistance had all but ceased. High Speaker Kavor was captured during the final stages of the assault. Brought before Admiral Reyes, he stared at the human leader with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. "You were nothing," Kavor said bitterly, "a joke among the stars." Reyes met his gaze steadily. "And yet here we are," he replied. "You underestimated us once. Don't make the mistake of doing so again." With the fall of Vexus Prime, the Zarn hegemony collapsed entirely. Systems declared independence, throwing off the yoke of oppression that had bound them for millennia. Former vassals flocked to join the Free Systems Alliance, eager to build a new future free from tyranny. On Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the victory spread. People poured into the streets, waving flags and cheering for the fleet that had avenged their humiliation. For the first time in history, humanity stood not just as equals among the stars, but as leaders. In the aftermath, the Stellar Concord was officially formed, a coalition of species united by shared values of freedom and cooperation. Dr. Carter played a key role in drafting its charter, ensuring that no single power would dominate as the Zarn once had. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Mars to sign the agreement, marking the beginning of a new era. Earth, once ridiculed and dismissed, became a symbol of resilience and innovation. As the stars twinkled silently in the night sky, humanity reflected on how far they had come. They had faced ridicule, scorn, and overwhelming odds, yet they had risen above it all. Their journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. They would never again be underestimated. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, humanity had proven itself not just as survivors, but as builders, creators, and dreamers. And in doing so, they had crushed the empires that once laughed at them.